You are not going to play by the rules.
Live life on your own terms.
Breaking Bad and its prequel series, Better Call Saul, tell the cautionary tales of two iconic antiheroes who've kept viewers entertained for a decade and counting. Walter White, the mild-mannered chemistry teacher turned drug kingpin, Heisenberg, and Jimmy McGill, the struggling litigator turned sleazy criminal lawyer, Saul Goodman.
When the going gets tough, you don't want a criminal lawyer, right? You want a criminal lawyer.
Yet these two characters are strikingly different when it comes to their personalities, their relationships, the nature of their geniuses, and their motivations for Breaking Bad.
We're done when I say we're done.
Walt's epic heel turn is sudden and swift.
This is not meth.
While Jimmy's downward spiral in Better Call Saul is an understated, slow burn tragedy.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. You can't help it.
So, as insincere Saul Goodman comes into clearer focus in Season 5 of Better Call Saul.
I'm Saul Goodman, and I make it my business to defend the citizens of Albuquerque against injustices of every kind.
To what extent is he Walt's spiritual descendant versus an entirely new kind of anti-hero, reflecting how times have changed since Breaking Bad first aired? Here's our take on how the similarities and differences between Saul and Heisenberg help us pinpoint what each man's story is really all about.
Saul Goodman. Yeah, it's like Saul Good, man. That guy has a lot of energy.
Yeah. It's just a name.
Now, say my name.
Heisenberg.
You're goddamn right.
This video is brought to you by Filmora 9, an intuitive, fast, and affordable video editor for creators of all skill levels. If you're a beginner, Filmora 9's user-friendly interface makes getting started easier than ever. If you're already a video editing pro, you can take advantage of their many cool features, stabilize shaky footage, add the green screen feature, or use their advanced color correction technology. It's supported by both Windows and Mac operating systems, and they also have tons of filters, overlays, and colorful title cards to make your videos look polished and professional. If you need additional media assets, Filmora 9 gives you access to film stocks, a one-stop library for royalty-free stock videos, photos, music, and video effects to elevate the look and sound of your video. At just $59.99, Filmora 9 is more cost-effective than other video editing platforms on the market. Check out Filmora 9 today. Just click the link in the description below to download it for free. Better Call Saul, like Breaking Bad before it, is the study of a man who feels he's not reaching his full potential and turns to embrace his shadow self.
The sweet, kind, brilliant man that we once knew. Long ago, he's gone.
Only the very best, with just the right amount of dirty.
But Walt and Jimmy's dark evolutions are motivated by very different personal and emotional needs. Walt is driven by ego. He feels a need to dominate a world that's belittled and underestimated him, to prove by any means necessary that he's a great man.
You clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger.
His hunger to be recognized as a genius sparks a violent quest for power.
I'm in the empire business.
By contrast, Jimmy is driven by anti-establishment resentment.
I mean, they'll smile at you, they'll pat you on the head, but they are never, ever letting you in.
He doesn't seem to share Walt's grandiose aspirations to greatness. At first, he just yearns for acceptance, especially from his better-educated, more accomplished older brother Chuck.
Wouldn't you rather build your own identity? Why ride on someone else's coattails?
Living in the shadow of Chuck and his firm, Hamlin, and McGill, led by the ultimate embodiment of privilege, Howard Hamlin.
Something classy, old school, La Posada, maybe.
Has pushed Jimmy to continually strive for approval, both from his brother and the system he represents.
And I found a law school that would accept me. I mean, it wasn't Georgetown or anything, but the University of American Samoa.
But after Jimmy is rejected time and time again by a stuffy, closed-minded establishment that looks on him with contempt and equates him with the worst parts of his past,
all you care about is your share of the payout. It's like talking to Gollum. You're transparent and pathetic.
he becomes disillusioned.
And I know he cuts corners, but you're the one who made him this way. And all he ever wanted was your love and support. But all you've ever done is judge him.
Since he's always going to be an outsider, Chuck McGill's joke of a little brother,
He'll never change.
he decides to tear the system down, or at least make some money off of its hypocrisies and loopholes.
You are going to cut corners, and you are going to win. They're on the 35th floor. You're going to be on the 50th floor. You're going to be looking down on them.
This contrast between Walt's and Jimmy's motivations exposes that while Walt is an exceptional man who won't be happy until the world understands that,
Figure it out.
Jimmy is more of an everyman, channeling the anger of any person who feels excluded by a rigid and judgmental elite.
You look at me and you see Slippin' Jimmy.
These men's triggers for Breaking Bad are also different. For Walt, the catalyst is his cancer diagnosis.
Lung cancer. Inoperable.
The revelation that he has very little time left shocks him into admitting that he's not satisfied with his humdrum life of suburban inhibitions.
I have spent my whole life scared.
Walt's buzzword is family, the thing he claims to be doing all this for.
What I do for my family.
But in reality, he's fleeing his family, distancing himself from them with every action he takes. For once in his life, he's putting himself and his own solitary significance first.
Did I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family?
I did it for me.
Whereas Walt pretty much runs at breakneck speed toward his alter ego,
I was alive.
Jimmy has spent most of his life running away from his dark self. He's long struggled with the temptation to cut corners, whether he was stealing cash from his dad's store as a child, and worrying that, to be honest, is to be a sucker.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
Or engaging in a series of small cons that gained him the moniker Slippin' Jimmy.
I know you. I know what you were, what you are. People don't change. You're Slippin' Jimmy.
A key word in Jimmy's story is sincerity. When he's trying to get reinstated as a lawyer, at first he's rejected because the committee thinks he's insincere.
How do you disprove insincere?
Jimmy.
But Jimmy's way through this problem isn't to be more sincere, it's to perform a lie more convincingly.
Did you see those suckers? That one asshole was crying. He had actual tears.
While Jimmy McGill is originally a heartfelt person,
And then there's this show of remorse.
It's not a show.
I know you don't think it's a show. I don't doubt your emotions are real.
Saul Goodman comes to be defined by his insincerity, which, in turn, comes from his lack of belief in a steadfast moral code. Gradually, he admits to himself that he thinks the established rules of right and wrong, and even laws themselves, don't matter.
Let me tell you something. If you're committed enough, you can make any story work. I once convinced a woman that I was Kevin Costner, and it worked because I believed it.
So while Heisenberg is defined by his egomaniacal sense of self, Saul Goodman is more defined by an absence at the center of him. The total lack of moral principle leading to a wholly flexible, empty opportunism.
But Slippin' Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun.
The two men's skill sets are also very divergent. Walt's genius is scientific and solitary. He gets the nuts and bolts of internal processes on a chemical level in both the drug he makes and the people he manipulates.
What is that shit? Fulminated mercury. A little tweak of chemistry.
His thorough understanding of cause and effect culminates in his perfect product. And it's also part of the mental game of chess he plays to conquer his opponents.
If you don't know who I am, then maybe your best course would be to tread lightly.
Jimmy's genius of sorts, on the other hand, is social and performative. His superpower is manipulating an audience.
That's our logo. He's just straight up copying us.
The more Jimmy evolves into Saul, the more he hungers for public exposure.
You couldn't just plop the dude in front of a flag. Why do we have to come here?
Production value, showmanship.
And after he becomes Gene in his post-Breaking Bad life, he feels so foreign to the character we know precisely because of his antisocial private life of hiding. Then there are the names Jimmy and Walt choose.
Okay. Let's start with a name.
He just goes by Heisenberg.
The Heisenberg moniker, an homage to German theoretical physicist Werner Heisenberg, captures Walt's prestigious aspirations and view of himself as a great man. But Heisenberg also used his genius to help the Nazis' nuclear weapons program in World War II, just as Walt ends up using his smarts in service of the drug trade, death, and destruction.
Kind of under the weather? Like you've got the flu? That would be the ricin I gave you.
For Jimmy, the Saul Goodman name stems from a motto of sorts.
It's all good, man.
The words echo Saul's philosophy and justification for going outside the law to get what he needs. If it's all good, nothing is really bad. So everything is permissible.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I.
Jimmy's also exploiting a tired Jewish lawyer stereotype.
My real name's McGill. Yeah, the Jew thing I just do for the homeboys. They all want a pipe-hitting member of the tribe, so to speak.
Which gets at how he feels he can't be himself if he wants to succeed in this world. Despite their differences, there is a commonality in both of these men's urges to break bad. Both are driven crazy by a mundane, normal life. They'd rather have larger lives than do everything by the book. Both of their journeys are not just transformations.
Chemistry is the study of matter, but I prefer to see it as the study of change.
But also self-discoveries, because Heisenberg and Saul Goodman have always existed inside Walt and Jimmy.
The deep part of his brain that's like an animal that isn't consciously thinking of the consequences of what he's pursuing and doing. Walter White too, right? Some of those things are like just this deep psychic wound that's shrieking and making him turn a corner that's just nuts.
Both series are infused with an aura of inevitability. In Better Call Saul, that's largely because we're watching a prequel haunted by the Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad, ominously looming on the horizon.
So if you want to make more money and keep the money that you make, Better Call Saul!
But really, in the philosophies of this universe, it's because these men's choices lead to consequences as inexorably as the steps in a chemical reaction.
I alone should suffer the consequences of those choices, no one else. And those consequences, they're coming.
Walt and Saul are two sides of the same coin. One side is calculated, cold-blooded, and violent. The other, colorful, quick-witted, and slippery. Ultimately, though, both have the same goal: winning, no matter the cost.
Remember, the winner takes it all.
I won.
The contrast between Jimmy and Walt is captured in the defining relationships we're given when each series starts. One is the emasculated husband who feels tragically underappreciated.
Look, Skylar.
Not yet. Please, I have the talking pillow.
The other is the perpetually disapproved of younger brother.
Right back to when I passed the bar and tried to join the firm. You didn't want me.
In certain ways, Chuck is the Skylar of Better Call Saul. Both are righteously reminding our main character of how he's failing to measure up.
Walt, the MasterCard's the one we don't use.
You see, that's your problem, Jimmy. Thinking the ends justify the means. And you're forever shocked when it all blows up in your face.
Over the course of the series, Jimmy and Walt liberate themselves from these oppressive starting dynamics, but that's not wholly a good thing. Chuck and Skylar are both, to a certain extent, moral anchors.
He would like to have freedom to do whatever he wants to, but the truth is he's got a conscience, and Chuck sort of represents that.
As Walt stops worrying about what Skylar thinks and coerces her to stay in the marriage through threats and intimidation, he displays a brutality that he didn't previously seem capable of.
We're getting a divorce.
I don't agree to a divorce.
And after Jimmy detaches from Chuck, ultimately driving his brother into a relapse of mental illness that leads to his death, his cold lack of feeling about his brother's demise precedes his slipping more and more into the emerging Saul persona.
You've been selling drop phones? On the street?
The last thing left keeping Jimmy from going full Saul is his girlfriend, Kim Wexler. As a romantic partner and female lead, Kim in some ways feels like a correction to Skyler. Like Skyler, she's an intelligent, morally conflicted, strong female character who has to watch the man she loves become something darker.
You do your thing, I'll do mine.
Jimmy, come on, what does that mean?
Don't worry.
But Breaking Bad was sometimes complicit in letting viewers enjoy Walt's dominating his nagging wife.
What I need is for you to climb down out of my ass.
And this led to widespread audience vitriol directed toward the character. Better Call Saul offers Kim more nuance and consistent sympathy.
You don't save me. I save me.
Like Jimmy and Mike, Kim has a light and dark side she's constantly struggling to keep balanced.
And maybe she does cut some corners, and how does that make her feel? Who does she have if she doesn't have him?
Meanwhile, in terms of her central importance to Jimmy, she's less Skyler White and more Jesse Pinkman.
Walt's ruthless. He'll do just about anything to protect his interest, except when it comes to you. He cares about you.
For both Walt and Jimmy, there's one person who comes to matter more than anyone else. For Walt, that's Jesse.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets!
And for Jimmy, it's Kim.
Good, I'm fine with that. Yeah, me too.
Walt is obsessively controlling, manipulative, and abusive toward his partner.
Ever since I met you, everything I have ever cared about is gone. Ever since I hooked up with the great Heisenberg.
But when it comes down to it, he can't give up on Jesse, and he actually dies taking a bullet while saving Jesse's life. Jimmy's loyalty to Kim likewise drives him to risky behavior and breaking a law or two.
I just got Mesa Verde back.
But he has a lot more respect and appreciation for Kim, and his sweet devotion to her compared to Walt's cruel mistreatment of Jesse reveals their underlying temperaments.
I mean it, by the way.
What?
Thank you. Seriously.
Lastly, we have Mike, who in other ways is Jesse's equivalent in Better Call Saul more than Kim is. This partner in criminal activity shares Saul's moral relativism and his disenfranchised anti-establishment perspective of the world, just as Walt moves away from Skyler and towards Jesse. After Chuck is out of the way, it feels like Jimmy's got Kim as the good angel on one shoulder and Mike as the bad angel on the other.
What are you doing?
The right thing.
We know Saul works regularly with Mike in Breaking Bad,
Saul Goodman sent me.
while Kim isn't at all mentioned in that show, so it's clear which angel Jimmy is going to be listening to.
So I'm here because you want me to assault a police officer.
I am asking you to take a few ounces of lukewarm coffee and spill it on it. I doubt that satisfies the definition of assault.
There's a noticeable difference in the pacing of these two stories. Walt's transition into his new self happens in the very first episode of Breaking Bad. He's already cooking his first batch of meth in the pilot. From there, Breaking Bad barrels out of the gate. Once plots are set in motion, they escalate at lightning speed. And while the show has 5 seasons, the events take place over only 2 years. By contrast, it's hard to nail down just one pivotal moment that turns Jimmy into Saul.
I know what stopped me. And you know what? It's never stopping me again.
I just finally decided to be me.
Hello there, Free Will Baptist, Pastor Hansford speaking.
And Better Call Saul takes its time, playing on our sense of dread for what we know will eventually happen, but don't know when.
So lucky. I have this letter. God, I could see the Matrix, you know? I was invincible. I could dodge bullets, baby.
According to the show's creators, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, it was imperative to slow down the hero's progression in this second show. Not only did they realize there was a lot of fertile ground to cover in Jimmy McGill's backstory, but they also never expected how connected they'd feel to the man behind the Saul Goodman mask.
The more we do this, the more we realize it's going to be kind of a minor tragedy when this guy does turn into Saul Goodman, because Saul Goodman is not as good a guy, he's not as likable.
Another big component that separates these two shows is the way they make us feel. Many viewers were living vicariously through Walt's hell-raising rampage.
To break bad is an old Southern expression, and what it means is to raise hell.
That sense of glee is all but missing in the more tragic prequel series. The constant push-pull of the story frequently punishes Jimmy, as well as the fans who just want to see him succeed.
There you go. Kick him in when he's down.
Jimmy, you are always down.
We've now gotten to like these characters. After 5 years of playing them, we like them. And we want them to be good people. We want them to be better people.
Perhaps one of the most obvious differences between these two men's fates is that at the end of Breaking Bad, Walter White is dead. But black and white flash forwards in Better Call Saul tell us that even after the events of Breaking Bad, Saul is still on his downward trajectory. He's got yet another new fake name.
That's Gene Takovic. And so I think they're going to tell more of his story this year, and then next year, well, if there is another year, more.
So whereas Walt has a more binary Jekyll and Hyde personality split, Jimmy/Saul/Gene is a three-part individual whose past, present, and future selves capture how we often do feel like different people over time. The result of many bad decisions, Gene may only be a shell of his former selves, but he still has the possibility of a future. The chance to make different choices and become different, maybe even redeemed. It's only when we're truly gone, like Walt, that the story is over for good. So taking into account all these similarities and differences, why did creators Gilligan and Gould follow up Walt's story with Saul's? It all started as a joke in the Breaking Bad writers' room.
Whenever we came up with something that was too silly or just weird, we'd say, oh, we'll do that for the Saul Goodman spin-off. And it was a joke.
Yeah. But the idea caught on. Throughout most of Breaking Bad, Saul Goodman offered some ancillary laughs to break up the tenser, darker moments of the series.
Don't drink and drive, but if you do, call me.
But as the show headed to its climax,
only you never told me that kid would wind up in the hospital.
Viewers got a glimpse of the flawed human being behind Saul's loudmouth exterior.
Stay. Face the music. Hey, I mean, how much time have you got left?
For him to take that moment and say, maybe you want to quit, was weird. It was a weird, why does he care? So it showed that he maybe had some humanity in him that we'd never seen.
That little glimpse of humanity was the springboard for the prequel series, whose success owes much to Bob Odenkirk's performance in the role.
Bob brought something else. He brought a little bit of vulnerability to it, a little bit of earnestness.
You might say that the differences between Walt and Jimmy highlight how much has changed in our world over the last decade or so. Walt is the embodiment of the lone, great, misunderstood man archetype, reflecting a myth that had more resonance in 2008 when the show premiered.
I am the one who knocks.
Breaking Bad is one of the case studies featured in the 2013 book Difficult Men, a phrase that has very different connotations just a few years later. In Better Call Saul, Jimmy's anti-establishment anger speaks more directly to our current era of mistrust, division, and fake news rhetoric. So as we watch and hope that this character's better angels might somehow prevail, we might really be hoping for ourselves, that we can still summon our best selves, even when the world seems beyond saving.
I'm not good at building shit. I'm excellent at tearing it down.
But until then, who's in charge? Me. That's how I live my life.